They tricked me into signing, but I tricked them first.
Elena Rodriguez woke up that morning with a knot in her stomach. At 73 years old, she had learned to trust her instincts, and something told her this Sunday wouldn't be like the others. She slowly got out of her matrimonial bed, the same one she had shared with Carlos for 48 years, until he passed away 2 years ago, leaving her alone in this three-bedroom apartment in the San Rafael neighborhood. The dawn light filtered timidly through the flowered curtains that she had sewn herself a decade ago. Her hands, wrinkled but still skillful, gripped the edge of the dresser as she stood up. Her knees creaked slightly, reminding her that the years didn't pass in vain. But her mind remained as sharp as ever, perhaps too sharp for her own good. She headed to the kitchen, her slippers brushing against the wooden floor that Carlos had installed when they moved to this place 30 years ago. Everything in this house had a story. Every corner held a memory. The mark on the wall where Miguel had hit it with his tricycle when he was 4 years old. The paint stain on the ceiling that Roberto had left when he helped remodel the living room as a teenager. The small garden on the windowsill where Carmen had planted her first flowers in elementary school. She prepared her morning coffee, the ritual she had maintained since she was a young woman. 1 spoonful of sugar, a splash of milk. Carlos always joked that she could make the best coffee in the world with just cheap ingredients. "It's not the coffee, my love," he would tell her. "It's the hands that prepare it." The phone rang while she was slowly stirring the steaming drink. Elena looked at the kitchen clock, 7:30 in the morning. It was early, even for a Sunday. Her children never called her this early unless something was wrong. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Mom, it's Roberto." Her eldest son's voice sounded different, more formal than usual. Roberto worked as a lawyer at a downtown firm and had always been the most serious of her 3 children. Even as a child, he had that way of speaking that sounded like he was presenting a case before a judge. "Good morning, son. Is everything all right? It's very early to call." "Yes, Mom. Everything's fine. Listen, I need to talk to you about something important. Carmen, Miguel and I are going to come see you this afternoon. Can you be home at 2 o'clock? Elena frowned. Her 3 children together, at her house, at the same time. That hadn't happened since Carlos's funeral, and before that, she couldn't remember when it had been the last time. They usually visited her separately, and only on special occasions like her birthday or Mother's Day. "All 3 of you? Is something happening that I should know about?" "Don't worry, Mom. We just want to talk to you about some things. It's important that you stay calm, okay?" That phrase made her more nervous. When someone tells you to stay calm before you have reason to worry, it usually means you should start worrying. "Roberto, you know you can tell me anything. What's this about?" "We'll talk when we get there, Mom. Just keep an open mind, okay? We love you very much, and we want what's best for you." After hanging up, Elena stood in the kitchen, holding the phone in her hand for several minutes. She knew her children better than anyone in this world. She had raised them alone for many years while Carlos worked long hours at the factory to keep the family afloat. She had been present for every fever, every nightmare, every broken heart, every small and big triumph. Roberto, her firstborn, had arrived when she was barely 20 years old, a difficult pregnancy that had kept her bedridden for the last 3 months. But when she held him in her arms for the first time, she knew she would do anything for him. Roberto had always been the responsible one, the one who took care of his younger siblings, the one who got the best grades in school. But he was also the most emotionally distant, as if he felt that expressing feelings was a weakness. Carmen had arrived 3 years later, her only daughter, the girl Elena had dreamed of having so she could teach her all the things her own mother hadn't been able to teach her. Carmen was sweet but impatient, affectionate but practical to the point of being almost cold sometimes. She worked at a bank and had developed that mentality that everything in life could be solved with numbers and planning. Miguel was the baby of the family, 7 years younger than Roberto, the most emotional of the 3, the one who still hugged her when he said goodbye, the one who called her just to ask how her day had been. But he was also the most impressionable, always going along with whatever his older siblings decided. Elena finished her coffee and headed to the bathroom to take a shower. As the hot water fell on her tense shoulders, she couldn't get Roberto's tone of voice out of her head. There was something final in the way he had spoken, as if he had already made a decision and was just going to inform her of it. She dressed carefully, choosing the blue dress that Carlos always said made her eyes look brighter. She combed her gray hair that no longer had the strength to dye every month like before. She put on light makeup, not because she was vain, but because maintaining certain routines made her feel like she still had control over her life. The rest of the morning passed slowly. Elena tried to keep busy cleaning the house that was already spotless, organizing papers that were already organized, cooking a lunch that she knew she probably wouldn't eat because of nerves. Every time she looked at the clock, the hands seemed to have moved barely a few minutes. At 11 in the morning, the phone rang again. This time, it was Carmen. "Hi, Mom. I just wanted to confirm that you're going to be home at 2. Roberto asked me to call you." "Yes, daughter, I'll be here. Carmen, can you tell me what this is all about? You have me worried." Carmen sighed on the other end of the line. "Mom, it's for your own good. We've been talking among ourselves and, well, you can't continue living alone anymore. Last month you fell. Last week you forgot to turn off the gas. These are signs, Mom." Elena felt her heart racing. Signs of what? That you need more care than you can give yourself. "Look, I don't want to discuss this over the phone. We'll talk when we get there, okay?" "Carmen, wait. Don't hang up." But the line was already dead. Elena stared at the phone as if it were a strange object. That she couldn't live alone? Since when had her children decided that? And more importantly, why had they decided that without even asking her opinion? It was true that last month she had tripped going down the building stairs, but it had been because the janitor had left a box on the landing and she hadn't seen it because of the poor lighting. It hadn't been due to lack of balance or coordination. And the gas thing, well, that could happen to anyone. She had been worried because Miguel had been having problems at work and she had gotten distracted, but to go from that to saying she couldn't take care of herself, there was an abyss. Elena sat in her favorite chair, a brown recliner that Carlos had given her on their last anniversary. From there, she could see the entire living room, with the family photographs carefully arranged on the shelves, the books she had read and reread, the television where she watched her favorite programs, the table where she had dined with her family for decades. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine what it would be like not to have all this. Where did they want to take her? To a nursing home? To live with one of them? The idea caused her a mixture of panic and sadness that she hadn't felt since Carlos's death. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Elena couldn't stand the anxiety anymore. She went to her room and opened the bottom drawer of her dresser, where she kept her important documents. There was the apartment's deed, the papers that proved this place was hers. There were also Carlos's life insurance papers, their marriage certificate, her children's birth certificates. Everything was in order, as she had always kept her things. Elena had learned from a young age the importance of having papers organized and up to date. Her own mother had died without leaving anything clear, and Elena remembered the headache it had been to resolve all the legal matters. While reviewing the documents, she found a letter that Carlos had written to her shortly before he died. She had read it hundreds of times, but she took it out again. In shaky handwriting, Carlos had written to her, "My dear Elena, if you're reading this, it's because I'm no longer with you, but I want you to know that I have never loved you more than I love you now. You have been the best wife, the best mother, the best companion a man could ask for. You took care of me when I was sick, without a single complaint. You gave me 3 wonderful children. You built with me a life I'm proud of. I know our children are going to want to take care of you when I'm not here, but remember that you are a strong and independent woman. Don't let anyone, not even them, decide for you what's best for your life. This house is yours. This life is yours. Make your own decisions. I love you forever, Carlos. Elena pressed the letter against her chest and felt tears beginning to flow. Carlos was right, as always. She was a strong woman. She had raised 3 children practically alone while he worked. She had managed the household finances. She had made important decisions about the children's education, about big purchases, about everything that involved keeping a family together. Why now, just because she was 73 years old, did her children think she couldn't decide about her own life? The doorbell rang exactly at 2 o'clock. Elena put away Carlos's letter, dried her tears, and went to open the door. Roberto was standing in the doorway, dressed in an impeccable gray suit as if he had come from the office. He carried a black leather briefcase in one hand and a serious expression on his face. "Hello, Mom," he said, giving her a quick kiss on the cheek. Behind him came Carmen and Miguel. Carmen wore an elegant outfit and carried a large purse. Miguel wore a dress shirt and looked uncomfortable, as if he'd rather be anywhere else. Come in," said Elena, trying to maintain a normal tone. "Do you want coffee? Water? Something to eat?" "No, Mom, thank you," Roberto replied as he entered the living room. "We need to talk." The 3 sat on the sofa, forming a kind of semicircle in front of Elena's chair. She felt as if she were on trial, with her own children as judges. Roberto opened his briefcase and took out a thick manila folder. "Mom, sit down, please." Elena obeyed, feeling how her heart began to beat faster. "We've been talking among ourselves about your situation," Roberto began in a formal voice, as if he were addressing a client. "And we've come to the conclusion that it's no longer safe for you to live alone." Elena opened her mouth to protest, but Roberto raised his hand to stop her. "Let me finish, please. Last month you fell on the stairs. 2 weeks ago Carmen had to come because you had forgotten to turn off the gas. Last week, the neighbor next door called us because you had left the music very loud until very late, something you never do, which makes us think you're forgetting to turn it off." "That's not true," Elena protested. "I never." "Mom," Carmen interrupted, "we've also noticed that sometimes you repeat the same stories when we talk on the phone, and the other day you didn't remember if you had taken your medications." Elena felt as if she had been slapped. "Since when do you keep a record of everything I do wrong?" Miguel shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "It's not that, Mom. It's that we worry about you." "Look," Roberto continued, "we've found a perfect solution. There's a very good residence about 20 blocks from here. It's called Villa Esperanza. We went to visit it last week and it's beautiful. It has gardens, activities for residents, nurses, 24 hours a day, meals included. You're going to be very well taken care of." Elena felt the world crashing down on her, a residence. They wanted to send her to a nursing home. "No," she said with a trembling voice, "I don't want to go to any residence." Carmen leaned forward. "Mom, you don't have a choice. You can no longer take care of yourself, and none of us can move in with you or take you to live in our houses. Roberto has his family, I have my job that requires me to travel a lot, and Miguel. Miguel also has his life," Miguel completed, looking at the floor. Elena looked at her 3 children as if she were seeing them for the first time. These were the people she had raised, whom she had fed when they were sick, whom she had comforted when they cried, whom she had applauded at every graduation, every achievement, every important moment of their lives. "What if I don't want to go?" Roberto sighed and opened the folder. "Mom, we've already made the decision. Look, here I have all the papers ready. We just need you to sign to authorize your admission to the residence, and so we can sell this apartment." "Sell the apartment?" Elena stood up abruptly. "This is my home. You were born here. Your father died here. All my memories are here." "You carry memories with you," Carmen said with that practical voice she used when talking about finances at the bank. "Mom, be realistic. This apartment is too big for you alone. The maintenance costs are high. With what we get from the sale, we can pay for the residence for several years." Elena realized they had it all planned out. They hadn't come to consult her, they had come to inform her of a decision they had already made. How long have you been planning this? The three exchanged glances. Since Dad died, Roberto finally admitted. We knew you would eventually need more care. Eventually? It's only been 2 years. 2 years in which you've been alone, Mom, Carmen said. 2 years in which we've been worried about you every day. Elena walked to the window and looked at the street where she had lived for 30 years. She knew all the neighbors, knew what days the garbage truck came by, what hours the neighborhood stores opened. This was her life, her routine, her world. Did you visit the residence without telling me? We wanted to make sure it was a good place before mentioning it to you, Miguel explained. Elena turned to face them. And it didn't occur to you that maybe I would want to go with you to see it? That maybe I would want to have an opinion about the place where you're going to send me to spend the rest of my life? Roberto began to show signs of impatience. Mom, we're not sending you anywhere. We're taking you to a place where you'll be safe and well cared for. What if I don't feel safe here? But you're not? Carmen insisted. Mom, you're 73 years old. What if you fall and break a hip? What if you have a health problem in the early morning? What if? Elena raised her hand to stop her. What if I simply want to live my life in peace in my own house? Silence filled the room. Elena could hear the tick-tock of the wall clock that Carlos had bought on their first Christmas as a married couple. She could hear the familiar sounds of the building, the lady from the apartment upstairs walking, the elevator going up and down, children playing in the courtyard. Roberto cleared his throat. Mom, we've already done all the paperwork. The residence has a very long waiting list, but we managed to get you a place. If we don't take it now, you could be left without options. What if I don't want to take that option? You don't have other options, Roberto said firmly. Elena looked at Miguel, hoping that he, her most sensitive son, would say something in her defense. But Miguel avoided making eye contact with her. Miguel, Elena said softly, do you also think I should leave my house? Miguel finally looked up. His eyes were moist. Mom, we don't want you to leave, but we also don't want something bad to happen to you. And hasn't it occurred to you that maybe you could help me stay here, hire someone to come clean once a week, install a medical alarm, call me more often? Carmen shook her head. That would be very expensive, Mom, and it wouldn't solve the main problem. What's the main problem? That you're alone, Roberto said, and the longer you spend alone, the worse it's going to get. Elena felt the room starting to spin. Throughout her life, she had been the strong woman of the family. When Carlos lost his job during the recession of the 80s, she had found work as a seamstress to keep the family finances afloat. When Roberto had problems at university, she had talked to the professors and had gotten them to give him a second chance. When Carmen had gone through her divorce, Elena had taken care of her grandchildren for months. When Miguel had his car accident, she had spent entire days at the hospital accompanying him. And now these same children were telling her she couldn't take care of herself. If this story is touching your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more real stories like this one, and share it with someone who needs to remember the value of listening to our elders. Your support helps me continue bringing you these stories that touch the soul. Roberto extended the papers toward her. Mom, I need you to sign these documents. Here, where the yellow marks are. Elena looked at the papers. The letters seemed to dance before her eyes, not because of vision problems, but because of the tears that threatened to flow. Can I read them first? Roberto checked his watch. They're very technical documents, Mom. They basically authorize your admission to the residence and give us power to sell the apartment and handle the legal procedures. But I want to read them. Carmen sighed with impatience. Mom, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The kids have extracurricular activities. Roberto has to prepare a case for tomorrow, and I have an early presentation. Can we speed this up? Elena looked at her daughter with incredulity. Speed this up? Carmen, we're talking about my life. Precisely why we need you to sign, Carmen said, to secure your life. Elena took the papers with trembling hands. There were at least 10 pages, full of legal terms she didn't completely understand. But one thing she did understand: they were doing this without her real consent. They were pressuring her to sign something that would change her entire life, and they didn't even have the patience to let her read what she was signing. When would I have to leave? Next Saturday, Roberto replied. We already scheduled the move. You already scheduled the move? Elena couldn't believe what she was hearing. Without asking me? We wanted to have everything ready to make it as easy as possible for you, Miguel explained. Elena got up and walked to the shelf where she had the family photographs. There was the photo of their wedding, young and radiant, full of hope for the future they would build together. The photos of her children when they were little, with those toothless smiles and innocence in their eyes. The photos of graduations, birthdays, Christmases, all the occasions when they had been a happy family. Do you know what hurts me most about all this? She said without turning around. It's not that you want to send me to a residence, it's that you decided it without me. You've completely excluded me from a decision that's going to change my life forever. Roberto stood up. Mom, we haven't excluded you. We're including you now. Elena turned to face him. No, Roberto, you're informing me. There's a very big difference. What's the difference? Carmen asked. That when you include someone in a decision, you give them the opportunity to say no. Silence filled the room again. Elena could feel the tension in the air, like an electrical storm about to break. Mom, Miguel said softly, what do you want us to do? We can't be at peace knowing you're alone here. Elena looked at her youngest son, the one who had always been more sensitive than his siblings. Miguel, do you remember when you were 8 years old and your dog got lost? Miguel nodded, confused by the change of topic. You wanted to go look for him alone, but I told you it was dangerous. Do you remember what you told me? No. You told me, Mom, it's my dog. I know where to look. And you were right. In the end, you found him under the neighbor's porch, in the exact place where you had said he might be. Miguel frowned, not understanding where his mother was going with this. This is my life, Miguel. I know where to look for my happiness, and it's not in a residence surrounded by strangers. Carmen stood up abruptly. Mom, this isn't a comparable situation. You were an adult when Miguel was 8 years old. Now what? Now I'm a child? Now you're an elderly person who needs special care, Carmen said with that condescending voice that Elena had learned to hate. Elena walked back to her chair and sat down slowly. She looked at her 3 children, these adults her babies had become, and felt a deep sadness that wasn't just about the decision they wanted to impose on her, but about the distance that had grown between them. Do you know what hurts me most? She asked with a broken voice. That you, who were raised by a woman who always respected you, who always listened to you, who always included you in important family decisions, are not giving me the same respect. Roberto sat down again and adopted a softer tone. Mom, we respect you. That's why we want to take care of you. No, Roberto. Taking care of someone means making sure they're okay. Respecting them means including them in decisions about their own life. Elena took the papers and began to flip through them slowly. She could feel her children's impatience, could see how Roberto checked his watch every few minutes, how Carmen drummed her fingers on her purse, how Miguel shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Did you visit other residences, or just this one? Just this one, Carmen admitted, but we did a lot of research. It has excellent references. And how much does it cost? Roberto mentioned a figure that made Elena's eyes widen. It was almost 3 times what she spent monthly living in her own apartment. And how are you going to pay for that? With the money from selling the apartment, Roberto explained, and if it runs out, the 3 of us can cover the difference. Elena realized they had everything calculated. They had done the numbers, they had evaluated the options, they had made all the practical decisions. The only thing they hadn't done was ask her what she wanted. What if I said no? All 3 looked at her as if she had said something absurd. Mom, Roberto said with forced patience, it's not an option. Why not? Because you can't continue living alone, Carmen repeated as if it were obviously true. And who decided that? Reality, Roberto said. The facts. Your age, your situation, the incidents you've had. Elena got up again and walked to the kitchen. Her children followed her, forming a small procession through the apartment. I want to show you something, Elena said. She opened the refrigerator, which was perfectly organized and clean. She opened the cabinets, where all the dishes and glasses were in their place. She opened the oven, which was spotless. Is this the kitchen of a person who can't take care of herself? Mom, Carmen began, but Elena interrupted her. Now come with me. She took them to the bathroom, which was clean and tidy, then to her bedroom, where the bed was made and clothes were folded in the closet. Do you see anything here that indicates I can't take care of myself? Miguel looked uncomfortable. Mom, it's not just the apartment, it's your safety. My safety, Elena repeated the words slowly. Do you know what makes me feel unsafe? That my own children have decided my future without consulting me. They returned to the living room, where the papers were still waiting on the dining table. Elena sat down again and looked at the documents. There was a line for her signature on each page, marked with a yellow highlighter to make it easy to find. Do you have a pen? She finally asked. Roberto hurried to give her an expensive silver metal pen. Here, Mom. Just sign where the yellow marks are. Elena took the pen and held it over the first document. She could feel her children's expectation, their relief that she was finally going to cooperate. But before signing, Elena looked up and looked each of her children in the eyes. I want you to know something, she said with a firm voice. For 73 years, I've made my own decisions. I decided to marry your father when everyone told me I was too young. I decided to have you when we didn't have much money. I decided to work when your father lost his job. I decided to take care of your father at home when he got sick, even though the doctors told me it would be easier to take him to a hospital. Her children listened to her in silence. I made all those decisions thinking always about what was best for my family. No one ever forced me to do something I didn't want to do. And now you're trying to force me to do something I don't want to do. Elena looked at the papers again. Her hand trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from the emotion that overwhelmed her. But you are my children. And although I don't agree with what you're doing, although it hurts me that you haven't respected me enough to include me in this decision from the beginning, I'm going to sign these papers. Roberto smiled with relief. Thank you, Mom. You'll see that it's for the best. Elena nodded slowly. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is for the best. With careful but firm hand, Elena began to write her name on the first yellow mark, Elena Rodriguez. But next to her signature, she added something else, something she wrote in small but legible letters. Roberto was putting other documents in his briefcase and wasn't paying attention to what his mother was writing. Carmen was checking her phone, responding to work messages. Miguel was looking out the window, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. Elena moved to the second page and signed again, and again, she added her additional words next to the signature. Page after page, Elena continued the same pattern. She signed her name where they had indicated, but each time she added something more. Her children, anxious to finish the process and relieved that she was finally cooperating, didn't bother to check what she was writing. When Elena signed the last page, she closed the folder and handed it back to Roberto. Done, she said simply. Roberto took the folder without even opening it to verify that everything was correct. Perfect, Mom. Thank you very much. You're going to adapt to the residence very quickly, you'll see. Carmen stood up and gave Elena a quick hug. Mom, you're going to be much better cared for. You won't have to worry about anything anymore. Miguel was the last to approach. His hug was longer, more sincere. I love you, Mom, he murmured in her ear. I love you too, son, Elena replied, stroking her youngest son's back as she had done when he was little and had nightmares. Roberto put the folder in his briefcase and closed the locks with a metallic sound that Elena felt like the sound of a prison cell closing. Well, Mom, on Saturday we're coming early with the moving company. Just pack the essentials, okay? There's not much space for personal things at the residence. Elena nodded. Can I take some photographs? Of course, Carmen said, but just some, maybe the most important ones. Elena looked around her living room, at all the photographs that documented an entire life. How could she choose which were the most important? The photo of her wedding? The photos of when her children were born? The graduation ones? The birthday ones? The family Christmas ones? And my books? Roberto sighed. Mom, there's a library at the residence. You don't need to take all your books. Elena looked at her small personal library, full of novels she had read and reread, cookbooks she had used for decades, history books that Carlos had given her on different anniversaries. Each book had a story, an associated memory. And Grandma's china set? Carmen shook her head. You won't need china, Mom. All meals are served in the main dining room. The porcelain china set that had belonged to Elena's mother, that had passed from generation to generation, that Elena had used at every special dinner for 30 years. And the piano? Silence was the answer. The old upright piano where Elena had learned to play when she was young, where she had taught her children their first musical notes, where she still played when she felt lonely. Roberto cleared his throat. Mom, we have to be practical. The room at the residence is small, just the essentials. Elena wondered what they considered essential from a life of 73 years. When can I go see the residence? The three exchanged glances again. Mom, Carmen said carefully, everything is already arranged. On Saturday you move in directly. Without seeing it first? We already know it, Roberto said. It's very nice, you'll like it. Elena felt a new wave of indignation. Not only had they decided to send her to a residence without consulting her, but they weren't even going to allow her to see the place before moving. What if I don't like it when I get there? You'll like it, Carmen insisted. It has very beautiful gardens, and there are activities every day. Music therapists will come, there are craft classes. Elena listened to the description as if Carmen were talking about a summer camp for children, not a place where she would spend the rest of her life. Miguel approached her again. Mom, we're going to visit you every week. You won't be alone. Every week? Elena knew it was a promise they couldn't keep. Roberto worked 60 hours a week. Carmen traveled constantly for work, and Miguel lived on the other side of the city. Well, as often as we can, Miguel corrected, confirming Elena's suspicions. Roberto checked his watch once more. Well, Mom, we have to go. Roberto Jr. has a soccer game at 6. Elena realized that even in this moment, in this conversation that would change her life forever, her children had more important things to do. She walked them to the door. One by one, they said goodbye to her with kisses and hugs that felt like final farewells. Remember, Mom, Roberto said before leaving, just pack the essentials. And don't worry about cleaning the apartment. We'll take care of everything after. After what? After you move. We have to prepare it to sell it. Elena nodded, feeling that each word was like another nail in the coffin of her previous life. When the door closed, Elena stood in the doorway for several minutes. The apartment felt different now, as if it no longer completely belonged to her. As if it were already just a temporary place where she was passing through. She slowly walked to her favorite chair and sat down. The silence of the house felt deeper than before. It was the silence of a life that was coming to an end, not by death, but by others' decision. Elena closed her eyes and tried to imagine what her life would be like in a week. She would wake up in a room she didn't know, surrounded by people she didn't know, following routines that others had established for her. No more coffee prepared her way in her own kitchen. No more sitting in her favorite chair to watch the evening news. No more watering the plants in the small garden on the windowsill. No more listening to the familiar sounds of the building that had been the soundtrack of the last 30 years of her life. She got up and walked to the window. In the street, life continued its normal course. Children played in the park across the street. Mothers pushed strollers. Workers returned home after a long day. Everything seemed normal, but for Elena, everything had changed. She went to the phone and dialed the number of her younger sister, Esperanza, who lived in another city. Elena, how are you, sister? Esperanza. Elena was surprised to hear her own voice break. I need to tell you something. For the next hour, Elena told her sister everything that had happened. Esperanza listened in silence, making occasional exclamations of surprise and indignation. And you signed the papers? Esperanza asked when Elena finished her story. Yes, Elena said, I signed them. Elena, I can't believe your children did that. Without consulting you? Without even taking you to see the place? I also have trouble believing it, Elena admitted. But it's already done. No, sister, it's not done. You can still change your mind. You can tell them you're not going. Elena sighed. And then what? Live knowing that my own children think I'm a burden? Know that they're worried about me all the time? Elena, you're not a burden. You're an independent woman who has taken care of herself for 73 years. But they don't see it that way. Then they're wrong. Elena remained quiet, considering her sister's words. Esperanza, do you think I'm being stubborn? That maybe they're right and I should be in a place where they take care of me? Elena, do you feel like you need to be taken care of? Elena considered the question honestly. No, I feel perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Yes, I fell once. Yes, I forgot to turn off the gas once. But those are things that can happen to anyone at any age. Then trust your own judgment. After hanging up with her sister, Elena sat at the dining table where the papers had been minutes before. She thought about the words she had written next to her signature on each document. Words that her children had not read. Words that maybe they would never read until it was too late. She went to her room and began to take some things out of the closet. If she was going to move on Saturday, she had to start deciding what she would take with her. But as she held each object, each piece of clothing, each photograph, she realized she wasn't packing for a new life. She was packing for a goodbye. She took Carlos's letter that she had read that morning and read it again. Don't let anyone, not even them, decide for you what's best for your life. Elena carefully folded the letter and put it in her purse. Then, she took the phone again and dialed a number she had memorized years ago but had never used. Herrera and Associates Law Firm, good afternoon. Good afternoon. I need to speak with Attorney Herrera, please. May I ask what this is about? Elena took a deep breath. It's about some documents I signed this afternoon and that I think I need to review with a lawyer. One moment, please. While she waited, Elena looked around her apartment once more. Maybe her children were right, and she could no longer live alone. Maybe she was stubborn and proud. Maybe she should be grateful that they cared about her. But maybe she also had the right to decide for herself how she wanted to live the rest of her life. Ma'am, Attorney Herrera can see you first thing tomorrow morning if it's urgent. Elena looked at the clock. She still had 5 days before Saturday. 5 days to decide if she was going to passively accept the decision others had made for her, or if she was going to fight to maintain control over her own life. Yes, she said with a firm voice. It's very urgent. I'll be there tomorrow morning. When she hung up the phone, Elena felt different. For the first time since Roberto's call that morning, she felt that maybe she wasn't completely powerless in this situation. She went to the kitchen and made herself a cup of tea, using her grandmother's porcelain china that, according to Carmen, she couldn't take to the residence. As she sipped the tea in the tranquility of her home, Elena began to plan what she would tell Attorney Herrera the next day. Because if there was one thing she had learned in 73 years of life, it was that it was never too late to defend yourself. And as the sun set over the city, Elena Rodriguez prepared for the most important fight of her life, the fight to maintain her dignity and her right to decide her own destiny. The apartment filled with the shadows of dusk. But for the first time all day, Elena didn't feel scared by the approaching darkness. Elena finished her tea and carefully washed the porcelain cup, drying it with the same care she had put into every domestic gesture for decades. As she put the china away in its place, she realized these might be her last days performing these simple but meaningful rituals in her own kitchen. Night fell over the apartment with that particular quietude of Sundays. Elena turned on only one lamp in the living room, creating a circle of warm light around her favorite chair. She sat with a blanket over her legs, the same one she had knitted during Carlos's last winter of life, and reflected on the day's events. Her hands automatically found the phone. Without thinking too much about it, she dialed Roberto's number. "Mom, is everything okay?" Her son's voice sounded surprised. It wasn't usual for her to call in the evenings. "Yes, Roberto, I wanted to thank you for caring about me." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Mom, you don't have to thank us for anything. We just want what's best for you." "I know, son, I know." Elena closed her eyes. "Roberto, can I ask you a question?" "Of course, Mom." "Are you happy?" The question seemed to surprise him. "If I'm happy?" "Yes, Mom. I have my family, my job, my house." "That's not what I asked you. I asked if you're happy." Roberto was quiet for a moment. "Mom, what's this about?" "I just want to know if my eldest son, the boy who used to run to me when he had nightmares, the young man who cried in my arms when he wasn't accepted to his first choice university, if that man is happy with the life he has." "Mom," Roberto's voice broke slightly. "I'm fine. We're all fine. Being fine isn't the same as being happy, Roberto." Elena heard a deep sigh from the other side of the line. "Do you know what made me happy when you were little?" Elena continued. "Seeing your face when you came home from school and told me everything you had learned that day. Seeing how you helped your younger siblings with their homework. Seeing how you lit up when you achieved something new." "Mom, why are you telling me this?" "Because today, when you came to my house, I didn't see any of that light in your eyes. I saw a man fulfilling an obligation, and I wonder if you've lost that ability to be happy, or if you've just put it on pause." Roberto didn't respond immediately. "Happiness doesn't come from doing what others expect you to do," Elena continued. "It comes from doing what you know in your heart is right." "Mom, what we did today is right. It's what's best for you. Or is it what's easiest for you?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. "Mom, it's not fair for you to say that." "Roberto, I've known you since you were the size of my hand. I know when you're doing something because it's right and when you're doing it because you feel obligated." Elena heard background noise, the television, voices of her grandchildren, the normal life of a family on a Sunday night. "Mom, I have to hang up. The kids have school tomorrow." "Okay, son. Just think about what we talked about, okay?" "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, Roberto. Always." After hanging up, Elena sat in the penumbra for a long time. The streetlights filtered through the curtains, creating familiar patterns on the walls she had looked at for 30 years. She got up and walked to her room. There, in her nightstand drawer, she kept a diary she had started after Carlos's death. She didn't write every day, only when she felt she needed to process something important. She opened the notebook to a blank page and began to write. Sunday, April 6th. Today my children came to tell me I must leave my house. They say it's for my own good, that I can no longer take care of myself. I signed the papers they brought, but I don't think they read what I wrote next to my signature. I've spent my whole life making difficult decisions. I decided to marry young. I decided to have children when Carlos and I could barely support ourselves. I decided to work when it was necessary. I decided to take care of Carlos at home during his illness instead of taking him to a hospital. I made all those decisions with love, but also with the certainty that they were my decisions to make. Today, for the first time in my life, someone else decided for me, and those people were my own children. I don't know if what I did by signing those papers was right. I don't know if I should fight against this decision or accept it gracefully. What I do know is that tomorrow I'm going to seek help to understand exactly what I signed. Carlos, if you can hear me from wherever you are, I need your wisdom. What would you do in my place? Elena closed the diary and put it back in the drawer. Then she prepared for sleep, but sleep didn't come easily. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw images of an unknown room, of strange faces, of routines imposed by others. Near midnight, she got up and walked to her living room window. The nighttime city stretched before her, millions of lights representing millions of lives. She wondered how many of those people were sleeping in places where they really wanted to be, and how many were in places where others had decided they should be. The building was silent. The Martinez family from the apartment next door were probably sleeping. He had to get up early to go to work. Mrs. Lopez from upstairs would be preparing her nighttime medication for arthritis. The young student from the apartment below would be awake studying, as he did every night. All of them had their own lives, their own routines, their own decisions to make each day. All of them were owners of their own destinies. Elena returned to her bed and finally managed to fall asleep, but her dreams were filled with confusing images. Suitcases she couldn't finish packing, rooms that changed shape every time she looked at them, voices calling her that she couldn't identify. She woke before dawn, as she had done for the last 50 years. But this time, opening her eyes in the familiar penumbra of her room, she felt as if she were waking up in her home for the last time. She got up slowly and went to the kitchen to prepare her morning coffee. While waiting for the water to boil, she looked out the window at the sky that was beginning to lighten. It was Monday. In 5 days, if everything went according to her children's plans, she would be waking up in a completely different place. But as she poured coffee into her favorite cup, Elena Rodriguez felt something she hadn't felt since yesterday's visit: determination. She had an appointment with Attorney Herrera in a few hours. And after that appointment, she would finally know if the words she had written next to her signature had any legal power, or if she had lost control over her own life forever. Elena sat in her favorite chair with her coffee, watching the sunrise through the curtains she had chosen and installed years ago. No matter what happened in the next few days, this moment belonged completely to her. And for now, that had to be enough. The light of the new day slowly filtered through the window, illuminating the face of a woman who had lived 73 years making her own decisions, and who wasn't ready to stop doing so now. The first chapter of this story was coming to an end, but Elena Rodriguez knew that her real story was just beginning. Saturday arrived, and with it, the moving truck. Roberto showed up with military precision, briefcase in hand and his phone buzzing nonstop. Carmen arrived minutes later, eyes locked on a checklist on her tablet. Miguel stepped out of the car, dark circles under his eyes, holding a thermos of coffee. They all expected to find Elena waiting, suitcase by the door, obedient and defeated. But the door was locked, and no one answered the bell. Roberto knocked harder. "Mom, open up! We're here!" Silence. Finally, he found the spare key under the flower pot, exactly where she'd told them not to leave it. He opened the door, and the apartment was empty. On the dining table, exactly where she had signed the documents, there was an envelope addressed by hand to Roberto, Carmen, and Miguel. Roberto opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter, written in the same elegant, steady handwriting they had known their whole lives. "My dear children, yes, I signed the papers, but I also signed something else. On Monday morning, I met with a lawyer. I revoked every single document. None of them are valid anymore, not the authorization to admit me to a facility and not the power to sell my apartment. This home is mine, and it will remain mine until I decide otherwise. These past few days, I remembered who I am. I am the woman who knitted quietly while waiting for you to come home from school, the woman who didn't cry when you scraped your knees, the woman who never gave up, even when life was deeply unfair. That woman is still alive, and she will not let anyone take away her right to choose. I didn't leave out of fear. I left to remind myself and you that I was not born to have my life dictated by others. I'm fine. I'm staying with Esperanza for a few days, but I'll return. I'll return to my home. You are not invited to decide when or how. I don't need to be taken care of. I need to be respected." With love, Mom. Roberto lowered the letter slowly. No one spoke. Carmen sank into a chair, stunned. Miguel smiled. For the first time in years, he smiled with pride. I knew it, he whispered. I knew she wouldn't let us push her like that. Roberto looked around. The house still smelled like coffee and memory, like decisions, like Elena Rodriguez. And in that moment, the three of them knew they hadn't lost their mother. They had underestimated a lioness. A woman who, at 73 years old, stood against the world with nothing but a coffee mug in her hand and her dignity burning in her chest. And that was the last time anyone tried to decide for Elena Rodriguez. Because on that Saturday, instead of beginning a new life in a place chosen for her, Elena wrote the opening line of the most powerful chapter yet, the chapter of her freedom,